Welcome back to the County Seat, our special edition for our webcast on thecountyseat.tv. We're talking about planning and zoning. We have with us our two guests. We have Mike Hyde from Duchesne County, who's the Community Development Director. That's a mouthful to get out smoothly. And we have Don Sargent from Summit County with the same title, and I'll just say it's the same title so I don't stumble over it again. One thing that I know is often confusing, and it actually even confuses me a little bit, is, you know, when you have a zoning and then there's always the exception, and the exception takes different forms. And so some people talk variance and some people talk conditional use, and boy, you know, it's not really clear what that difference is. You want to chime in on that, guys?
Planning is not a one-size-fits-all. Any zoning planning regulation will not fit every situation. And so that variance provision is available under state statute in most county and city ordinances to allow some exceptions to the rule based on certain findings. In Summit County, we've had a variety of those requests for variances. The Board of Adjustment is set up in Summit County to address most of those. That cannot be done at an administrative level. However, they do not have the ability to go outside certain findings of the code. They still have to make findings in order to grant a variance. 2 years ago, the county commission at the time adopted a provision that we did put in the code that gives them special exception ability and powers. So if someone pleads their case to them that wouldn't apply to a Board of Adjustment ruling, then they would have, again, another opportunity to get a special exception, it's called, to have a variance overturned or a code development standard reconsidered depending on what their particular circumstance is. And that was the key with that ordinance, is it had to be very particular, very specific to a piece of property that was not subject to any other regulation in the development code. The county council could take a look at that and make an exception.
Now, is variance done on a parcel by parcel basis?
It is.
And what is the difference between the variance and a conditional use permit?
Well, a variance is a waiver from a standard, typically in an ordinance, such as a setback standard, potentially, or a height limit. But in a zoning ordinance, there's typically a table of land uses, and some of the uses are allowed outright in a zone. These are the uses that we feel are applicable and desirable in that zone. Mm-hmm. Then you'll have another column of what's called conditional uses. And those are uses that are allowed in the zone, however, only under certain conditions that might need to be applied to protect the surrounding area from the impacts of those uses. So, you know, like the gravel pit I mentioned earlier is an example of that. That would be a conditional use in many of the zones. However, due to noise and dust, there may need to be conditions of approval to help mitigate those impacts.
So that's something that's already, the conditional use permit is something that's already pre-calculated, saying, well, this may come up, but we need to look at it to make sure that it's okay, but it fits within the parameter of an acceptable use for that zoning.
Right.
And a variance is saying, well, no, this isn't even defined as part of this, but we'll look at the piece of property and see if it's a different situation.
Right.
Yeah, that's good. I think a conditional use, and how we interpret it in Summit County over the years, has been a conditional use is a use by right. That use has been identified as an appropriate use in this location if the conditions of approval can be satisfied, if the conditions can be placed on that application to mitigate the impacts in accordance with the code, then it can move forward. And that's the difference between the conditional use and the variance, because variance stands on its own, that it's just not meeting one of those standards, and then someone's requesting some exception to the rule.
Okay, well, that does help clear that up. How does the Board of Adjustments work?
Board of Adjustment in Summit County, it's a 5-member board. They we meet once a month, and they hear requests. Their role is to hear the evidence from the applicants on the applicant's responsibility and burden of proof on them to provide the argument of why a variance should be granted, what their particular circumstance is, and why the board should consider their plea. And so the Board of Adjustment hears the evidence, and then they have 5 findings in the development code they have to make in order to grant the variance.
In Duchesne County, there's 3 different avenues that a variance request can take. First is an administrative approval, in which if we find that the surrounding property owners have no issues with it, the planning staff can grant the variance as a routine, uncontested type item. If, however, there is controversy associated with it, then Like in Summit County, we have a Board of Adjustment who can have a hearing and act on a variance. The third way is that if the Planning Commission is considering an item such as a conditional use permit or a subdivision plat, for example, and there's a variance to a standard associated with that subdivision, the Planning Commission can look at the variance at the same time, rather than having it go off to a Board of Adjustment separately.
Okay, well that makes sense. What other avenues are there? I mean, by the time it hits the Board of Adjustments, you're at the end of the road, or, I mean, you know, if somebody's really determined that they should have an elephant zoo in their backyard, where do they go next?
Well, there's several avenues of appeal available through county planning. If someone disagrees with a staff decision, then oftentimes that appeal of that staff decision can go to the Board of Adjustment. However, if someone disagrees with the decision of a Planning Commission, then typically it would go to the county commissioners for them to resolve. And then if someone disagrees with a decision of the board or the Planning Commission or county commissioners, then it will end up going to the district court.
We're a little different in Summit County on that. We're a staff appeal, administrative appeal, like if I just make a determination or interpreted a provision some way and the applicant said, no, I think it's not, I don't think you're interpreting it correctly, they have the ability to go directly to their elected officials on appeal and have that considered at that level. The Board of Adjustment in Summit County is appealable to the district court. It goes right to the district court. It's out of the county at that point. And similar to Duchesne County, when it gets to the county council level, elected officials there, that appeal is also at the district court.
So Summit County's trying to wash their hands of the whole thing a little earlier.
Well, we get an opportunity to get the elected officials sooner.
Okay. Well, great. Anything else that that we might want for our friends that have joined us for this extended interview? Any last comments, or should we come back and go through the Board of Adjustments again at some later date?
We can do it in a later date. There's a lot to talk about variances and good examples on what's worked, what hasn't, and what's been a good experience, what's been bad. It could be a whole segment in itself. I think the one thing I would end with is when anyone is ready to do anything with their property, and you know Mike has mentioned this before, is to come in and see us. Come in and talk to the Planning and Zoning office to get some information. And I know it's frustrating from some people when they say, I don't want anything to do with that planning department down there. and so I think it's incumbent on us as representatives of county government and public servants is to approach people on showing them not what they can't do with their property, but what they can do. Give them all the options available under the codes and ordinances that they have as tools to develop the property in the way they'd like. And to have that approach, I think, comes across a little better, provides a little better customer service from a public servant standpoint, and creates a little better relationship between the public and the governmental office.
Sounds great. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the extra time here.
Absolutely. Thank
And
you.
as always, thank you for tuning into the website. Be sure to tell your friends about the county seat and our website, thecountyseat.tv, because it's a great way to get information on how your county government works. We'll see you next time.